I think it was the second session of our memory management talks that we started exploring a sample use case. Because there's a concept called tutorial here. You read everything, but you cannot make anything out of, you don't make anything out of it. Ultimately, the purpose of reading itself will go for it. So whatever that we read, we need to apply, we need to relate that with a real-time problem that we go through. For that, we took JSON parsing as one of the use case, because JSON parsing is a use case that every one of us know, because we are doing it in and day out. Maybe some libraries are doing it for you, but we know that what is happening behind the screen. So we took that. We set ourselves a goal. We wanted to create a memory efficient JSON parser. So you can read the previous session. One of the interesting question there is between memory and performance, which one should come first? We asked this question. If anybody knows the answer, you can unmute and then you can speak anytime. But I'll just keep giving answers to keep moving. So between memory and performance, theoretically and also practically, it is always better to start with memory, because performance is a natural yield of memory. Before you go to the performance optimization, you need to optimize your memory, where you get relatively a better performance before you only touch that functional aspect and all those stuff. So that's what we saw with a practical example in the last. So this is the source code of the project. This project is there in GitHub. I shared the URL also last time. You can go and check it. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, Satish.
Okay, so this is the source code. And JSON parser, don't even think that JSON parser is a library that we cannot touch it. We do not have data structure and all this stuff. Ultimately, JSON parser is just one class, one Java class. We all, as a Java developer, should be capable of reading a simple Java class, which is of how many lines of code? It's not long. It's a huge Java class. It is just 637 lines of code. Even in the 637, a lot of code is actually documentation. So it should be fairly simple. And we saw that bits and pieces of how we constructed in the previous session. So you can always go and refer that. We will start, I will just give a quick recap of what is this JSON parser is all about. So any JSON parser that you do, at the end of the day, these are all the three main problem makers. The problem makers are one, string, because the problem with string is not just a computer keyboard characters, right? It can be Unicode. Sometimes escape characters will be there. So you need to deal with a lot of strings. String is one of the complex things. That is why even in Java, they do quite a bit of work just to manage string effectively. String is a separate immutable class, and it has its own compact strings and all the stuff that we have seen in the previous thing. And it is applicable to JSON parser also. And then it was numbers. In fact, numbers is what we saw last time. So numbers, even though we say number in JSON, it's not a simple number in Java. Java has around 15, 16 implementations of numbers. And each of these number has a separate containers. For example, integers, floats, long, short, byte, double. So as a JSON parser developer, you need to make sure that your number, even though it is a small now, it's the same number in JSON number, you need to make sure it gets into the proper container. That is, if it is a 3-digit number or lesser number, you should put it in the byte, not at the integer, because integer will take more memory. So like that, we will be keep optimizing it. The program at this level, where the size of the code is small, but the sensitivity is very, very, very high, because any request that you do in your web server, whatever you do, goes through this piece of software, that is JSON parser, and comes out of this. That is, whenever a request comes, it comes with a JSON text. It goes through the parser, converted as Java, gets into your business logic. Once the business is done, it returns a Java object, and that is again go to the JSON parser, converted as a JSON string, and then it goes to the end user, which means every single call that you do actually goes through and comes out of this. Even a small improvement, small memory improvement, small performance improvement is going to give you a huge benefit at the end. So the sensitivity is very high. This puts us into the practice of TDD. So we are following TDD, not just theoretically, but practically. This is a problem that you cannot do without tests first available. Okay, we have created the test. So we went one step ahead also with the test, where we did not just check about the accuracy, we also checked about the performance, because the whole idea of we writing a brand new JSON parser from the scratch is we want to improve the memory, we want to improve the speed. And we cannot just say that we did it 2x higher, 3x higher, because we did some latest technology. We don't want to fool it. It's for the user to see it. So this is the data that we got last time. So compared to argJSON, Jackson, JSON, from the memory, whatever that you see green, it's a good sign. We are 99,064 bytes lesser than Jackson. So we are memory optimized. But you see performance side, it is always lower. So we'll see that down the line, because last time when we did it, we were thinking that we did something really wonderful. We did a wonderful parser, but it is fast. Fast can go very fast in technologies. New technology comes, you need to upgrade yourself. And that is what we are going to see. We are trying to improve this numbers. We will continue to improve. We will have some more sessions also. It's not an easy task, but we will give something that is very interesting. We'll take 1 or 2 topics maximum in a day, and we will read it in detail, bits and pieces covered without any doubts. We will go through. That's the idea. Okay, now with that note, we will go how we'll see how to improve the performance. But if you look at last time, so 3 characters, numbers, strings, and IO. In that, numbers and string are relatively not simple, but they come under numbers, string, and then IO. Numbers we already covered, we improved it. Now, in fact, we have a test case also. If you look at the second test case, it guarantees that in case if you put a byte, it is accommodated by byte. Even if you give it as in JSON, give it as a big string, when it comes out, it comes as a byte only. So this we verified. It goes in the proper container. So number is a solved problem. Okay, but then string, I'm not solving it now. I will whatever lesson that I learned from IO session, I'm trying to accommodate now. So strings, I think it will come a little later. So I will put it for the next session after other memory management session. Now we go to IO. IO is a very, very special character. You can actually separate IO from these 2 guys. Consider that these are all internal your family issues when it comes to Java parser. These are all internal, because how you deal with numbers and string, it's internal data, you deal it whichever way that you want. It's a family issues. But IO is an external guy, it's a guest, because IO is coming from an outside. It's an outside render. It might be a file, it might be a stream. So when an external guest comes, you should always give priority to him. One priority that you can give is you can answer his question, leave him for some other people so that others can use it. You cannot hold him for a longer. The longer that you hold the IO, the lesser the performance. That's the bottom line. The longer we hold the IO, it is better. It is slower. Longer we hold, slower we get. Okay. Now we try to make this. We don't want to hold this longer. That's the idea. Okay. Now with that, let us see the internal implementation. So if you look at the internal implementation, if you have a JSON like this, for example, this is a string, this is an array, this is a number, and there might be booleans or whatever it is. So maybe we can take a basic JSON. Let us basic itself is very complex. Maybe I will say take object JSON format. Where is this issue? I do not have anything basic. That is wrong. We should have basic. Okay. Now format code, reformat code. Okay. So let us make it very, very basic. Okay. I have a number. I have an array. I have maybe a boolean. We can give true or false. And then what type of what is the other type that JSON supports? Booleans, string, number. What other types that it supports? Null. Null is also a type in JSON. Okay. So we covered all the types. No, we did not cover. What is that? We did not cover. We did not cover a decimal number. 1 point. Okay. We have everything here. Okay. Now what happens through this JSON parser? This JSON parser will try to read all these values. So it goes to this place and it will identify that, okay, this is a number, get number. This is a decimal number, get decimal number. This is a string, get string. So there is a lot of getter methods inside that code. Now let us look at the get string method. Get string is relatively, get number is complex in terms of operational complexity. Second is string, but let us see. So now this is complex logic. Okay, we have seen this line by line in the previous session. You can refer it. But at the end, this is the place where you read your string. This is a get string. Okay. Now the problem is we don't consider this a problem, but until we see that it's a memory that goes through. So now if you look at this get value, what is happening here is it is trying to read a string. Now the IO should wait until I complete my reading. I keep reading until I complete the reading. The IO will reply that JSON supports date. Unfortunately, JSON doesn't support date naturally. You can tweak it, but date is not supported. Space we can mute and talk. So JSON doesn't support dates. String, you can use string to accommodate a date. But
okay, understood. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Okay. So now here, if you look at this get value, right? This get value returns an object immediately, but it returns immediately. That is fine, but there's a problem here. The problem is, okay, if you have a string, it will read the string. If you have an object, it will read the object. Once everything is done, then your IO will go, because this reader will be waiting for you for a long time. So this is the entry point. So here, this reader, you take it and then you just keep reading, and then once you read the complete reader, you get the value. and there is something wrong here. So what is wrong here is, well, let us see what improvement that we can do. Anybody can find out what is the improvement that we can do. My intention is, I do not want to make my reader is the IO part. Reader wait for long. I want to finish my work with reader, give it to him so that I can do other stuff directly. I can handle with strings, integers later. But I do not want to wait for I do not want to hold the reader for a long time. The more I hold, the more the problem that this guy creates. What can I do? Okay, let us go into this. Now look at the string case. Yeah, please.
Can you use some buffer?
Buffer. Yeah. What do you get out of the buffer? How do you solve this problem? Actually, it's a correct answer. Who answered it?
Richa.
Richa. Yeah, Richa, great answer. Yeah, you are correct. Logically, you are correct. So tell me, how do you see buffer as an improvement here?
See, so I will not be blocked. We'll get everything in buffer, then we can process over it.
We can process over the buffer. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Let us take one level even from there, Richa. So buffer will hold it in memory, right? It will temporarily hold it. Buffer is a temporary memory, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but in that case also you are taking some extra memory, right? So let us consider that this guy is even poor. He cannot afford to do that. He's not like a rich enterprise where they can put additional machine and show the performance improvement. This is a small poor startup company or a community software where they say I have only 2 GB RAM, so I cannot give that memory also. Is there any other way that we can do? So maybe I will rephrase my question. I will tell you. So you are reading a string. Okay, here. Of course, you need to parse the JSON. Read the JSON file that you cannot escape. So here you are reading the JSON file. That's okay. That you are reading. But once you read it, at the end, if you look at it, when you return it, you need to get the string out of JSON string, right? So we're getting a string out of JSON string. What does it mean? JSON might have some escape characters, etc., that has to go through processing, or number you want to accommodate it in certain way. So even if you look at the number, you keep reading from the JSON, use a string builder, keep reading. But at the end, you want to read it as a number, then you go to this number, and then you see the state and all those stuff, and then you do certain stuff. Okay. So now I'm just thinking, let us consider this line of code, the 230. What is happening is, I read the file. So file content is available with me as the string builder. This is the file content. Maybe I will rename it just to show. Refactor, rename. So this is the file content specific to the number that I see. That is, for example, if it is this object JSON, this is the value. This is a string value. Now I have that value. Okay, that I read already. Now I'm just thinking from here, I can definitely get the number, but I can get it in future. And I'm sure that it is something that I can complete for sure. So it's a completable feature that I'm 100% sure. So is Java giving anything where I can represent something like completable feature? Let me Google it. Okay, I think there's a completable feature itself in Java. So what is it saying? I don't want to go to the technical details of it, because the more that we get technical, we cannot apply it practically. We'll be only worried about the technical aspect. Let us look at this conceptual thing. What is completable feature? An action that can happen in future. It can wait, and it is sure shot that it will be completed. Either it will be success or failure, but it will be completed. And this is the concept that you will see in JavaScript called as promises. What you call promises there, you call futures, but it's ultimately same thing. So here, what about we return the IO the moment you complete reading the content, like the string builder content that you see. If I read this, whether I'm going to convert this string as a number, integer, or something, that I will do in future, that's okay. But by going with completable feature, we can definitely improve the performance. Am I right, Richa? Is there one improvement? Okay, good. Everybody agreed, or anybody thinks that this can backfire? Okay, so considering the silence as an acceptance that it will not backfire, or it will backfire. Okay, we will see. Rather than we think about it, right? Let us do it and then see it for the thing. Luckily, someone has already done all the test cases. So whatever happens, they are not going to lie. They are going to say upfront that, okay, this is what you did and this is what the benefit is. But before we go there, let us see the numbers once, register it. At the end of it, you are going to tell me whether this is a master move or it is a failure move. That we'll see later. So this is the numbers. So now we are not part, we are going to target this part. Okay. Now let us do the completable feature part. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make all my getters as future. Bear with me, I'm I type little slow. Okay. So now everything has a cost. Okay. Now just because I'm going to improve this feature, right? It's not going to come for free. There should be some side effect that I know. Let us see what is the side effect. Okay. Now here the completable feature. Sorry, I'm not good in syntax. So I'll refer this guy. So this guy says if I want to build a completable feature, so you need to give something like this. Okay. So in here I can return. Okay. Now this is going to get string IO exception. Okay. That is a problem because this guy will give a IO exception, it seems. What can we do? Surround with try catch also you cannot do.
There is a utility in Apache Commons to kind of wrap it for you. I was trying to write one myself.
In Apache, right? Library, right?
Yeah, Apache Commons library, I think. Apache
Yes.
function utils.
So for that, I need to add this form.xml dependency, right?
Yep.
Okay, but consider that this is a poor software again. You cannot add any more dependencies. Okay, very poor startup base. Okay, not enterbase. I know in enterbase you can add libraries left and right. Okay, now this is a
you can write it yourself if you want to.
Correct.
It should be okay. You can write a utility with the same logic.
Correct.
Just that it's better to reuse than to contribute another duplicate.
Correct. So now what we can do is maybe I want to improve this with water that we have now. Let us try to do this way. I put it here. The syntax is a problem. Actually, let us not hide it with the latest versions of Java, right? One of the problems that we face as not traditional Java developers, we have this problem of syntax limitations. Okay, string problem I solved it. Okay, now number also I want to return as future of number. Okay, now see. Initial number. Okay.
2 time return is there, line number 22015.
220?
215.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Okay. Then sometime it will look stupid, I will tell you, but bear with me. So now what happens is numbers, this one we did. So now we go to Boolean. Boolean part is Boolean. You might think that why I have true or false, but if you look at the previous session, you will understand. We want to go memory optimized, so we did it in this way. So this also going to return future, but Boolean is primitive, right? So we cannot do it. So I say Boolean, this Boolean. What is that? Wrapper Boolean. And then I will say completable feature of assuming true. Okay. Similarly, this guy also return Boolean, and then I will say completable feature of false. And null also is a separate case. Okay. So null, how do I do? Completable feature of null. Sometimes this performance optimized code will not look like good looking code, but it's okay. Future of object, then null. Okay, now this is okay, but the problem is the actual core culprit is this guy, this get object and all those stuff that we want to make future. So how do we make it as future? Future. Future. Okay. Completable feature, and it returns empty map. Completable feature, it returns JSON map. Okay, and then this intern will create problem. This intern we use because if anybody remember, tell me why we use intern for specifically for key. There's a memory. See, but these are all the inconvenience, right? I need to add this execution exception. That's okay. We'll see that. Now this is also future. Okay, just to give an answer why we are using intern. By doing intern, what will happen? Anybody can answer? What is the use case of intern method?
You search in that pool, whatever
exactly. So your keys are going to be repetitive. So why should we keep creating new keys? So even if you have thousands of JSON files, your keys are always same in memory. It can save a lot of memory. This input I got it from above. So okay, now I think we did everything. Unhandled exception. So this you need to throw. Okay, and it is expecting this one. Okay, that's okay. We did unhandled exception. So this also you need to throw to the method signature. Okay, unhandled exception. See, this unhandled exception itself is creating a lot of this. Okay, but you need to return the object as such. So what do you need to do? Get this one dot to get right? Get the value, and get the value returns future of anything. How do you say anything in this one? You say like this. Okay, incompatible find. Return this. I return null. Future of object is value. This also you need to throw exception. Future of anything. Okay. Okay. Now it says it's created. First thing, that with TDD performance, it's okay. Performance memory we'll see later, but it should not break the existing use cases. It should say whether it is correctly working in JSON parser or not. Now we have TDD, no problem. Just away from button click. That's the advantage of using TDD. So now I'm just running this again. Whether it runs, okay. Exception must be thrown. Okay. See, this is creating a lot of this problem. Okay. Okay. The problem is we are analyzing memory, and when you are analyzing memory, this guy creates. I have unable to find volatile field. What is volatile field?
In case of multi-threading, it will have only one copy. Every thread will not have its own copy.
Oh, okay, good, good. So now what is happening is you are trying to measure your memory. That memory measurer that we saw, right? That is Java application memory. That is what printing your memory. When it calculates, it has some concurrency related issues. Let us see what is that issue that this guy is having. I think we made a silly mistake. Probably the content inside your JSON is not correct, it seems. This is a JSON object. So we are using natural JSON object. This is a hash map. So let us see what is the content. Now this is the place where no exception. Okay. Now it is trying to measure the memory, but it failed. Let us see what is this problem that this guy is creating. Let us go to debugger and see this our JSON object. This has a result of size 1. It has a value for geometry, it seems. But what is wrong here? What is the content of this value here? It is a completable feature. That is wrong, right? It's inside, it's a JSON value. So you need to resolve the features before you returning it. Am I making sense? Agreed? If you're returning future, how will you measure the memory? Something that is going to happen in future, right? You should have a resolved object so that memory can be measured. Agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
Right?
No.
Okay. Okay, now let us resolve.
It's a pointer to something that doesn't exist.
Exactly. So it doesn't exist. Okay. Okay, now we made a small mistake, it seems. Where did we make a mistake is, if you look at this resolving get objects or get array, because start and all those stuff, anyway, we'll do the get, because that will happen. I was thinking that by doing this get value, I resolved it. That is what I was thinking. But actually, no, get value dot get. Okay, now it will resolve. That is what we will be hoping for, but it will not. The reason being, okay, it's an outside object, it's okay. We will think that, okay, this will solve because I'm resolving it. But it's not like that level, right? You need to resolve even objects or lists inside. That is, these are all the composite objects, right? The get object. Do we resolve everything here? No, we are not resolving it. So you are going to make a resolve method. So just to save the time, I am going to copy something that I have prepared earlier just to save the time. Okay. So we are going to add some resolve methods. So this, all the side effects are because I am trying to do one improvisation. That is, I'm going to get into the completable future stuff. That is costing me heavily. Let us see later. Okay. Now set. Everything is important. Okay. Similarly, for map list, get resolved list. To resolve the list. So resolve list is nothing but, see, now you look at it, every object it will take from the return thing and it will try to call that get method. That's it. So now I say resolved list. So additional 2 lines also I need to add. Now you might be wondering why I'm doing it. The reason being, if I'm giving this here directly, Java will not take it, because it will complain that this guy can cause unhandled exception. You cannot put it inside lambda. So no problem. You can adding by another line, you can escape it. So I'm doing it. So it's like, syntactically, it's not readable, clean, concise code. That's okay. But I'm getting this completable feature benefit. Okay, I'm doing it for that. Now go to this.
You can actually refactor that method, that line into a separate method and give the method reference. No?
Exactly.
That way it
that
will
method. Yeah.
execute in future, not this way.
Exactly. That's a method function reference. So it will return object. That's okay. But where is it? Return future of so and so. Oh, okay, okay. Because I want my JSON map as so and so, right? Java Genix comes for help. It's okay. Now let us, compilation is done. Let us try to execute it. Test case should pass. Performance secondary. Test case passed, but performance improved or reduced?
Reduced.
At least last time I see some green here and there in the performance column, but now everything is red. Performance has gone for a task.
Yes, we have some green in the GSM. Now we don't have in the speed.
Exactly. We had some greens here and there. Okay, of course, it's in developing software. It's not a developed software. So there will be definitely some shortcomings. We will keep improving as we go through the course. But definitely now we took some 50 steps, but now we are going back on 40 steps actually. No green here. What should have happened? That is, I don't know. But the problem is, by going with the latest and cutting edge Java, I achieved 2 things. I reduced the performance. I reduced the code quality. Agreed, everybody? Or anybody has seeing a benefit of using a completable feature here? Both are a drawback now, right? Okay. In that case, let me try to relook at what is these methods are all about. So I am considering that there is another problem also, in fact, that I forgot to explain. So here, if you look at it, there's one improvement that I can do. What improvement that I can do? I can do here. So here I'm doing this get resolved method. Let me improve the font size. Here I'm trying to improve my performance. Maybe I will give a clue also. I am running in a multi-core processor. How do you improve performance in this method?
Use the parallel process.
Yeah, parallel process. Yes. You can do fork and join or this one. So here I try to, there's a mapping, right? All that you are trying to do, what are you trying to do? You get an object, map it to .get, right? Okay. So you will be thinking that, why do I write this many lines of code? Come on, we are actually doing latest version with the latest version of Java. Java supports Lambda. Lambda is all about Java 8. That is what we consider. So now we say list dot stream dot parallel dot map. Map is what we are trying to do ultimately, right? In map, what are you going to do? Each entity, that element that you take that element, that is JavaScript. Okay. E dot get. Okay, and then finally collect to list. We will be thinking, okay, everything should come. I can put everything in one line of code. But what is the culprit here? Do you see a problem here? Syntactical problem. It says error. What is the error? You are expecting a lambda. So otherwise, what you can do is
Satish, we can collect these futures and we have completable all of, and that will wait for all these futures will complete. instead of getting each one, and it's a kind of sequential processing now.
Yeah, but I'm doing parallel now, right? Because I'm taking a list. So the parallelization come from here.
Yes, this is parallel also will do that, but the original idea of completable future is we need to collect all those completable futures in
And
at least.
do it combined together and at the end, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yes, both ways. Yeah. But the bottom line problem that you need to know this, again, this guy will say anytime you use lambda, if your internal block throws exception, unfortunately, you cannot throw from the function level. These are all internal. So the only way that you can do is you need to put a try catch, and try catch will kill your application later. So you cannot afford to do a try. So these are all coming because I'm using completable feature. Completable feature is very good in many of the cases, but is it good for my case? That probably I think overlook at it. Okay, so now let us look at it. Because of that, I'm not able to go to parallel. Let us imagine that case. Okay, there's another way of doing hack, friend said, but now let us see. It's two ways of solving a problem in technology. Okay, one side people claim that we are using that so and so frameworks which are too good to do a complex application. This is one way of looking at it. There is another way of looking at it. First of all, why the application is complex. And now we look at the second aspect. Okay, let us not get that complex level and then try to solve a complex problem. Let us try to simplify the problem. I think the problem that I made in first place is let me get into the same level where I keep checking my test cases because I don't want to break the existing functionality. Performance or memory secondary. Okay, now it's working, but still that green is red. There is no green here. Okay, now let us try to get some green there. The problem that I'm seeing is I looked at my methods, that is get integer, get number. Where is this get number? Yeah, here. Get number as it's something that can happen in future. Some get string means something that can happen in future. Okay, but I'm just thinking. I think that is the place. Thinking too much about future sometimes, it can even corrupt your present benefits. So that is a problem. So I want to get away from future, but I want to look at it. What is this supplier methods are This get string is supplying me string. This get number is basically supplying me number. Get value is supplying me object, boolean, or whatever it is. Basically, they are suppliers. They are not future. They are no internal thing. They are supplying, but they can supply it later when I call get. Okay. So what is the feature that Java supports if I want to create a supplier function? So let us try Google it around. So as a Java programmer, effective Java programmer, I will always Google. Even a reverse string, I will check how to reverse a string in Java. Supplier function in Java. And the supplier function itself, it's available from Java 8. Okay. Now, why don't we use this? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think that no, I'm not a super duper Java programmer. I don't want to use any great features, concurrent features. I'm going to go with a simple thing. So all the features that we see, we will rename them. Sorry, we will use instead of future, we are going to use supplier. Replace all. Okay. Now supplier you need to import. I imported. Okay. Now once I import supplier, I do not have any of the concurrency issues. Now I can simply remove it. All this throws, classes, everything. Okay. Then go to this completable feature supply async is not required because I'm not doing that. I can just remove that line. The supplier I can go directly as a function reference. So it can go as like this. Okay, that is also done. Then this will not go to result object. So this will not throw any exception. This is not going to throw. So you don't need to catch it. Okay. This is not going to throw any exception. I can remove this. Okay, this is future. We'll say supplier. Replace all. Okay, I removed it. Okay, no compilation error, nothing. Okay, and everything gets like everything. So now let us do this. Did we improve the performance? At least I see one green. But now the basic good thing that we do today is going to benefit us in future. That is same with TDD also. Now you took a better step compared to completable feature. You took a better step. Now with that better step, can we get anything better out of this? Can there be any improvement? Anybody? I can put all this as a single line now. How? Dot stream dot map, whatever that I get, it's a supplier, right? So I will get supplier function reference. Get dot collectors to list. Let us run this. Functionally, it should be working. Forget about memory and performance later. That we'll see later. Improving. Okay. We see some more green. Okay. Now I'm better positioned. I don't need to do a lot of reinventing variant, all those stuff. I can simply call parallel. Let us try to execute this one. Ayyo. Probably it backfired. I heard some people complaining that parallel sometimes backfire. Okay, so let us not do parallel. We improved with few more numbers showing in green now. Okay, so any other improvements that we can do? Any guess?
You want to return a list or you want to return stream directly?
Which method?
Whichever you're trying to. So basically, is that the final consumer method where you are converting mapping from stream to list?
Yeah, maybe basically you are converting from string to a Java object. So basically it's a reverse. It's not, you are not returning a string. You're reading a string. You're reading a Java JSON string and get a list or map out of it.
Yeah, it's not a string, Satish. I was referring to a stream. Java. So you have the stream. You're collecting from stream into list.
Yes.
You want to not do it and keep it as a stream till you really need the.
Very good.
Or
very
are we
good.
doing it right?
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, in fact, it's in fact the next session that we wanted to do. It's okay. Good thing. Who is this?
That's Girish.
That's correct. That's correct. So that we will do. That's one improvement. Excellent. Excellent. So basically you are doing lazy, right? I mean, why should we do things earlier? In fact, that is the place where, I mean, at least in the next 2 sessions, right? You can think of, getting a better out of Jackson or JSON because they are great libraries. They do a lot of stuff actually. What we do is very, very small. So in that sense, we can easily get their numbers crossed easily. But this arg.json, right? It's always difficult. The reason being arg.json follows your approach. That is, if you keep looking at it, right? This number will remain consistent across the execution. The reason that it happens is, if you look at internally in the last session we talked, any time that you see arg.json, it occupies memory of 64 bits, 64 bytes. Can you guess why? It is something to do with the answer that you took.
Completely delegate everything to future.
It will not read until you actually finally read. It will just keep the metadata and then it will hold. It will be like a lazy initialization. It will just read the object only when you say read it. And that is why arg.json is always very, very fast. It's a very small library, and for very memory optimized executions, libraries that you want to, frameworks that you want to do, they will do that. It's a low level library. That's an excellent point that we need to do. But apart from that, is there any other improvement that we can do? So that other improvement that we are going to talk about, we will simply talk about it, how we are going to do it. We will do it in the next session. You can also try it your side. I will put the idea across. Maybe you can give your ideas also. Then we can collectively try to implement it. Next session, I will show that as a live implementation. But now let me tell you the crux of what we are trying to do. Okay, we did the improvement from the number holding and all those stuff in the proper container. Then we did the improvement with supply functions to release the IO earlier. That's okay. But in reality, whenever you work on any project, you are not going to work with any data that is isolated, string, numbers, objects, like that. Most of the time that you are going to work with collection of data. So, which means how you are going to deal with the collection of data is going to make all the difference in real-time projects. Till now, we did not touch upon that. Okay, now we are going to touch upon that area. So, in order to support collection of data, what is the feature that Java supports? Collection framework, right? So we will, this is just my personal recommendation. I have seen many tutorials for collections. I mean, sometimes I will find it very, very difficult if the talk is very, very technical. It's very, very difficult. I said, no, application developer, it will be very difficult, but it should be very, very simple. So in that sense, I have seen one person who simplifies this collection to a great extent that anybody can understand. So I don't know, nowadays he is not doing a lot of videos. I don't know why, but Ranjit Ramachandran's YouTube channel, you can check. He's not putting any recent videos, it's all old videos only. But in that, he mentioned about how HashMap works in Java. In fact, this particular video is an inspiration for me to optimize the JSON parser. In fact, I could get lot of benefit out of that this tutorial. So I strongly recommend, please go through this, not just for this video, for other videos also. You can trust this person. So now coming to the collections part, where collection comes in JSON parser. What type of collection that we deal with in JSON?
List.
Exactly. Some people confuse with the list and so is JavaScript, Java JSON array a list or a set? And why?
They have to be list, right? By JSON
Exactly.
definition.
Yes.
It doesn't talk about this duplication, and it's purely a list all the time.
Duplication can be there, but it's ordered collection.
Correct. That's what
Correct.
it is by definition in JSON.
Correct. It's an ordered, but it can allow duplicates. That's okay. It can allow duplicates. It can allow null, but it is always an ordered collection. No ordered collection, basic is list. So that is list. What about Java JSON objects? They are naturally what data types in Java? Objects.
Objects, you mean map?
Exactly. Map.
Maps and list.
So it's map and list. Okay. Now the next set of improvement that we are going to see, in fact, there you'll see major improvements is with these two people. There. Okay. By taking supplier, you have a great improvement here. What improvement that you can do? That concurrency was the culprit for me to create this. So I no longer need this. I can make it 2 line to 1 line. My code reviewer will be happy, but the result will be same. So now I just take this, put it here. Okay. So now there are two things. One is list, another one is map. Okay. In these two, which is the most priority one from the JSON perspective? Is map the most important one, or is the array that is the most important one? Where you can get better benefits, the better results? Is it the map optimization or list optimization?
List.
List, yeah. For all the obvious reasons, in fact, that is why I pointed out to you on this tutorial. From the memory perspective, you cannot have a tree. That's all. You cannot have a tree. Okay, so but you can visualize a tree. How do you visualize a tree? Internally, the tree data. Where can you put the tree data? When you say tree, what is that internally from the computer perspective? Array. Exactly. It's an array. Okay, you cannot go do any magic to go no hash map represented in computer. No, it's an array. It's an array of objects. But probably you have pointers and all those stuff internally structured in such a way that you are able to go one object to another object effectively, traverse it and all those stuff. You can mimic it. Okay. Now list naturally is an array, but whereas map, it's an array, but you hide your array inside and you do all your operations around it. It makes it look like a hierarchical tree. Okay. Considering that map is relatively a complex object, and to best extent, you should stick to use list. In case if it is not possible, use map. And when you cannot avoid using map, use it effectively. Most of the tutorials that you see forget about tutorials. Let us talk honestly as a Java developer. Let me admit it myself. I do a lot of enterprise software, around 17, 18 years I have worked. But now if you ask me from the actual practical perspective, what is list means, Java list, array list is list, hash map is map. We don't go beyond that. Anybody goes beyond that in the regular project? Rare, at least rare. Okay, but actually Java has huge set of options for you to choose for list, for map also. In fact, Ramachandran has another excellent video where he exactly goes through each and every details of a map. How do you choose the map? Okay. Now, beyond that, Java also says, okay, see, these are all the kind of possible maps that I have. These are all the kind of list that I have. But if you are really not satisfied and you want to do something from scratch also, you can do it, but you can still enjoy my benefits of Lambda streams and all those stuff by implementing map or list. So in our case, we may implement our own map, or we may choose a map that is already there in the Java. Which map that we are going to choose to best, we need to choose a map implementation that best suits a JSON object. That is our goal. There are two possibilities. A, it could be the existing map implementation from JDK, or we might end up deciding that we are going to implement on our own. But if you are going to reinvent the wheel, you should give the proper justification. So with that question ourselves, I'll end the session today. So you can go and check which are all the map implementation. But in the next week, after Vaibhav's complete memory management, we'll continue to do that. After Vaibhav completes it, we'll come and revisit the same program. So as I keep saying, we cannot learn much from a bigger software. From bigger software, you learn smaller. But take a smaller software, go deeper, you learn always much higher. So we will revisit the same program until we can get best out of most of the concept that is in Java. That will be the next session. So the question to you all is, go and check which map implementation best suits for JSON, and two, in case we need to do our own implementation, why and how we will do it. Okay, that's the idea. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope this was useful. Any doubts, please shoot the question. Even my sessions or even previous memory management sessions, please shoot out the question. Maybe I will start with the maps that I know. Maybe others can pitch in and then give me some idea about that. There is something called identity hash map. What is identity hash map? And it is something to do with this. So we, as I keep saying, we get results not by what we do today. We might get results with all the hard work that we did yesterday. So that is how it works in reality. So I will point out one area, get key, where we did some good thing in the last session. And that is something that we can use to get an identity hash map going. Usually in a hash map, to get your object, it uses dot equals. Dot equals are always costly because they are going to compare your values. But identity will not compare values. It will just compare the references. In our case, the keys are always interned. Interned means they are going to be a same memory object, same reference. In that case, we don't need to go with a hash map directly. We can use even identity hash map. But there's a catch. Identity hash map breaks the map contract in some cases.
Souvik is still on mute. Just a quick question, Satish. Was this how you plan to take the session, or like did you end up maybe short circuiting something? I'm just wondering, because did we jump too fast because there's too much silence?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So see, if you don't understand also, shoot out. I will go slow also, not a problem at all. I mean, there is always a, when I took the session, right, whether I need to take it from the PPT side or some presentation side, I was thinking. But I thought, okay, I will do it in front of you. In fact, no, let us be honest. I did all this before itself. So everything that you see, it's there in this branch. So I'm just trying to rush through that actually. So sometimes it might be confusing. If it is confusing, again, I can explain the same session the next thing also, or this time itself. Please shoot out the questions. Who asked this question just now?
This was Girish here.
Girish. So for you, are you able to follow it, or did I go very?
Yeah, fast? I'm able to follow. The thing is, I'm just thinking, maybe with couple of interactions, did we take it track to short circuit the whole conversation? Is what I didn't want to derail that. That's why.
Yeah, basically the idea is I want the ideas. I mean, okay, I'll tell you what is the crux behind this. Okay, rather than I tell that this is what I did, this is how you learn the concept. I want people to question, and then we'll try to do that. So by seeing our questions in the program, it will make easier for them to understand these kind of concepts, because these are very hardcore basic concepts. That is the idea. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making sense to me. I'm just thinking there should be more interaction.
Correct. Exactly.
One question I have. Yeah. So like how this supplier, more useful as compared to the compatible whatever we replace. How does it solving those issues?
Okay, so very good question. First, our intention is I want to release my IO as faster as possible. That is my intention. That is my goal. In order to do that, I have two items. One is by going in an asynchronous route, completable feature. But by using, there are two options, right? Completable feature or supplier, both I can use. By using them, what I do is, if I, for example, I'm reading a string, I can say, I do whatever that I want to read from the IO that I read, but after I read it from IO, I would say I will string later out of the string builder, because from there it is about builder to string builder to this one, nothing to do with IO. So I want to release my IO faster. Okay, that is my goal. Is the goal clear?
Okay.
Okay, now that is the goal. Now I have two options. Either take it as a completable feature and then do that fork and join and all those stuff later, or take it with a simple supplier. Okay. In my use case, completable feature is not required because I'm not doing anything fancy, because I'm going to offload my outsource my work to Java Lambda. For example, that you see at the last end, right? When I did that get list, I will give everything to Java Lambda where I can do parallel, just like switch on, switch off. It will give me that programming efficiency. In order to do that, this completable feature was kind of it was making my life difficult. It keep increasing complexities and all those stuff. In that case, the most simpler alternative is supplier. So finally, we chose supplier because supplier provides the sufficient enough items for my goals, and that's why we ended up choosing supplier. So it's like always, you have basic programming, advanced programming. If the basic programs itself solve the problem, solve it with the basic programming. That is why we chose supplier.
See, one thing we got confused because like the compatible feature we generally use for the non-blocking call,
yes,
where we want to utilize this multi-threading kind of concept,
exactly,
where we want to put. But again, like that, the comparison you have to versus the supplier altogether different things. Where basically we use this as a supplier in the lambdas, where you want to supply the values. Correct. Whereas that compatible feature is a different altogether. That's why, like, I didn't understand properly, like, what you are trying to first solve and why you move from the future to supplier. Like, it could be like a similar kind of the things where we can see future different things that I know that. But like the comparison you have taken that little confused me. I don't know whether I got confused or other also got confused.
No problem. No problem. In fact, thanks for asking that question. Okay. Now supplier. Let us see what is this is all about. Okay, a supplier. Yes. Okay. Now to your question, right? Whether it is completable feature or not, it is feature basically at the interface level. Agreed? Completable feature is basically a feature. Correct?
I think those are different things. Completable feature is didn't hold the log.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm coming to. Okay. Now let us look at this. This is a source code. Okay. Now, supplier is a very simple construct. All that it says is, if you want to do some functions, pass that as a function. Okay. In our case, if you look at our implementation, getString is a function. Rather than executing the getString there itself, I'm just returning that function there, so that I keep the IO keep moving. Okay. But if I choose to use future, yes, its feature is because it has cancel, is cancelled, is done, where you have all the flexibilities of executing this in a multi-threaded environment. Correct? Okay. Considering between these two, supplier is not good for handling multi-threaded environment. Okay. And future is good when you have multi-threaded environment. But in our case, this is an internal call. It is inside our class and inside our own thread, which means it's always one thread. Okay, in that case, future is kind of it's kind of very, very, very luxury to me. I don't need it. A luxury that I don't need it. But supplier is sufficient enough for me because all that I expect is only this particular feature, that is getting it later as a function.
Like because we started like you asked the question, okay, then somebody give you the answer buffer. So like we were thinking that direction where like you don't be looking for kind of things where you just pass the information, get the kind of that response, and
that also you can do. In fact, it's an excellent question. Okay, so it's all about where we use which feature. Okay, that completely makes sense actually to make it here as a completable feature, because see here you can make it as a feature. This is the last call where you call from outside. Okay, now if you make this as a feature, if you want to make it non-blocking, because there are two things, right? One is reading the object and then getting the value out of it. This we can actually make it as new completable feature. Sorry, completable feature dot supply async. This way. So now we can combine, get better out of both. In that case, it will not block you. It will just do it behind the screen. But again, this you need to write a try catch. How do you avoid try catch? Is value. This is a future value. Sorry, supplier dot get. Am I making sense?
Okay, that you are basically calling that
Yeah.
is okay.
So ultimately, this is the only method that we are exposing it outside. This is the only public method. So in the public method, you have the choice of making you use supplier for all your internal class. These are all private internal. It's all your internal JSON class related items that you do anyway single threadedly. So you are 100% sure. But from outside, if they can call it the multiple threads also. So for them, you can always expose future. So it's like combining your both the word. In fact, it's a better improvement. Thanks. Correct.
Got it. Well, like what I know that both are different use cases. Now it makes sense. Like you are using that compatible and you async. You can have multiple thread here, line number 48.
Correct.
You are passing supplier. Where
Exactly.
it's a kind of train where you just board it and get out from that supplier.
Exactly.
Supplier something where basically you are supplying some of the values.
Correct. Actually, there are two methods actually. Consumer and supplier. They are highly underrated. They are not utilized heavily, but in the daily routine, right? This consumer supplier can reduce a lot of your code. Of course, they are used in lambdas, but beyond lambdas also they make a lot of sense in practicality. The strategy pattern, all this you can implement with this guy. And for a traditional Java developer, it is nothing but earlier used to do with abstract classes, that inline classes and all those stuff. What you call anonymous classes or something.
Yeah.
Right, same concept. Yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So with that, thanks all for the opportunity. Happy New Year. And next week we will have another session with Vaibhav. We will continue with the previous topics only. Please go through our previous topics also. You can get better out of the next session. Thanks all. Vaibhav, from your side, is there any announcement?
Satish, please count again.
Yeah. So if from your side, you have any announcement for the next what is that we are going to do for them?
Satish, I think in between there was a very short discussion. See, I generally don't work on much on the API level, but there was a short discussion about volatile, and I think one of our participants has explained about. Value don't get screwed up when it is multi-threading environment. Okay, but these we have something left on the garbage collector side also. I know that we need to finish that. But there is some part on the data consistency. I don't know people are interested or not. So when there is a term called data consistency or visibility of the data, it is very important for you to understand from the top stack up to bottom stack that how the data visibility happens. Now, the simple thing like you asked what is volatile, right? And I think one of the participant said that it is the value remains fine when it is a multi-threaded environment. So can anyone explain me that how this happened? I mean, what is the game we play across the scene? And believe me that this is not something related to Java. In any language, maybe the volatile word will change to other word, but the concept will remain the same. So these things are important for us to understand, that anyone understand that how actually these keywords work internally, or how we take the support from the operating system or from the processor. Anyone?
Yeah, to my understanding, there will be a memory barrier after every read or things. So the cache values will be updated to memory, main memory, so that the main memory will be reading from the values will be updated when we are reading fetching from other codes after.
That's right. That's right. Can you explain me what is memory barrier?
Memory barrier is a OS construct, but truly speaking, I don't have complete. I don't recollect it completely.
Can I try?
Of course,
Yes,
of course.
please.
So basically, like every thread have their own memory, and while we have a different threads, and they having their own memory. And suppose you have some of the variable where like you modifying those values, and like those value would be keep track on particular thread case. But if the main the memory is shared memory across the thread. So sometimes that whatever the variable you have declared, if you declare a volatile, that got chance that the corresponding thread have increased the value, but other thread cannot see that the reflected value on the other thread. Correct. So like T1 have changed 1 to 2, but that is up to that case of the T1. And suppose T2 want to see the reflected value, it cannot see because that is up to thread T1. Now, when you make as any variable as a volatile, we solve the visibility issues. So once you modify that T1, what will do, it also reflect the shared memory. So the shared memory is accessed by all the thread. So T1 have modified 1 to 2. Now that updated in the shared memory. And while the T2 is reading the value from, so it always get that the memory from shared memory. So it always see the reflected value what other thread have updated. So that's why we use a volatile key.
Very well tried. Very well tried. Anyone else? May I know the name who has explained it in the end?
Ravindra.
Ravindra. Okay, Ravindra is our every week fellow. So Ravindra, what you have explained is very well, and I think everyone have noticed that there are many words like came in between. He discussed about visibility, and he discussed about how threads will have their own memory. Then he discussed something about shared memory, right? So Satish, let me know if this sounds logical to you, right? So it has multiple aspects, right? And we need to understand each and every aspect of these things to understand into the detail.
Yes.
If you will ask me where is the detail required, or it is I'm going to use it or not, I really don't have any idea that you are going to use it or not, or is it going to be helpful for you tomorrow or not. But understanding it will definitely, like, it will give you a confidence like how the actual data sharing happens inside the code at the OS level, or at the processor level, or at the architecture level. Okay, so here I can just explain you in a small stuff, but I remember even Souvik correct me that we had a concurrency and data discussion once, and I think I left it after the one session. So this is what we need to discuss again, and it is a very important concept. So what happens, like Ravindra discussed, and we have a discussion before also, that there is a barrier, right? And actually barriers are not simple barrier. There are multiple types of barriers. Okay, you can have a barrier when you read the data, or you can have a barrier when you write the data. Okay, and it comes into load barrier, load store barrier, store load barrier, store barrier. There are like 4 or 5 kinds of barrier. Okay, now what actually barrier means, that whenever say like if I'm volatile, I'm putting a barrier, right? So whenever the volatile line code will get executed, okay, the next line, the JIT compiler will put a barrier. That means that you cannot execute anything after this line. Okay, and this is atomic operation. You cannot execute anything after this line till all the different sets of that, all the different locations, the value will be not updated. Okay, so it is not that only different threads can have different thread can have their own local memory, cache can have their own memory, then there is a shared memory, okay, that can be in the RAM. So there are many places where actually your one data is lying, okay, variable T, and it is possible that at some place T value is 40, some place 41, some place 100, okay, depending upon that what are the operations going on in your application. Okay. So some thread is changing to some another value, some thread is reading somewhere, some thread is again writing somewhere. Just to understand that actually it is screwed up everywhere in the memory. Now the time I put a barrier, okay, and when you will go more lower at the processor level, we generally use fencing. Okay, the time when we will put the fence, that means you have to update all the data across all the memory locations. If it is not done, you cannot execute the next instruction. Okay, so I will explain you more that how the interesting thing happens in the read barrier. Can you execute further or not? Or in the write barrier, or the generally we say store barrier, can we do it further or not? But the idea is very simple, that it is a time consuming process. Okay, so when you do volatile, many times you have seen a lot of notes that volatile can hit your performance, and many places you can also see that volatile can increase your performance. Okay, you will have 1,000 kind of articles around volatile, which is like, I mean, these things are very old keyword, but most of the languages have went beyond it. But the thing is that when you write a volatile, actually there are a lot of things which a JIT compiler have to do into the code. And when JIT compiler cannot do it, JIT compiler need to tell the underlying operating system that you have to do it, because thread is something which Java don't handle, right? So Java have to tell that, okay, there is some data sitting in some another processor, some data sitting in some another processor. Let's sync up all the data, okay? And then it gets synced up, and mostly it will not break, okay? So I think we can have a detailed discussion about all these things, like different barriers and how the fencing works, how the visibility works, okay? Then we can discuss like what happens if the operation can be swap in, swap out. Like if I'll move the second operation to first and first operation to second, what will happen, right? So as in before operations, what are those? So depends upon you guys. I mean, if you're interested, we can discuss it. But something which upsets me, that maybe it is just only for the knowledge. Maybe you will not able to use it anywhere. So all over to you.
I know actually concurrency, there are some specific areas, at least as far as I know, there are some specific applications that I work in IoT or something like that. Concurrency is a bare minimum item that we should know. Whatever that you are saying is highly applicable. So in fact, if you remember, we discussed about this. After our memory, same like memory management, concurrency is an underrated topic. Not everybody knows the details actually. So we plan to do a series of talks on concurrency, remember? So we can cover all this also.
Yeah, sure. We can do that. But you know, when you are using the upper level concurrency, actually this all will be taken care by the underlying code. So still I am telling you the same thing. Okay, that if people are really interested in knowing that how the things goes beneath that, we can discuss definitely. And you will in the end, you will become a good debugger. Actually, it is not like the higher level code is written or lower level code is written. Anytime if you know the underlying theory, you can debug the concurrency code and you can fix it. So that is only one advantage which I can see.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this concurrency package, right? Java, for every version, same like collection, they add a lot of new way of doing concurrency in every release. And by knowing this behind the screens, right, I should be able to choose the optimal one for me. Most of the time, it's the executor that we use. I have used only executor. I don't go beyond that phaser, WEQ or something like that. There are some other concepts, right? So probably if you can show some lights on it in the next series of talks, that will make a lot of help for people.
Okay. Any other point by anyone? Sure.
So we have two ways of things, right? We have one way of supporting Java is supporting concurrent data sets, like concurrent skip list or concurrent hash map. And other way is locking. We can use that non-concurrent data structures with lock. Can you provide guidelines on which one to use? On
yes, that's a very good point, and that is what I told Satish, that if we need kind of guidelines, we need to understand the underlying design, like how actually the Java util concurrent came into the picture. And before that, if you know that generally concurrency is done by the synchronization and all, how that is done, and then what is this locks, semaphores, barriers, latches, and all those things, how they work. And before knowing any of these things, actually, you need to understand the fundamental of memory, that how the locks are generally applied on the memory, or how the barriers are generally applied, on how the memory can be fenced out. I mean, it is like how the memory can be checked out by the operator. Okay, so any time a operation in the memory can be stopped by the OS pages saying that you cannot do anything before doing some particular kind of operation. Okay, so the thing is that first we will discuss about the lower memory APIs. Okay, like how the fencing and M-fencing works in Linux. I generally work in Linux kind of architecture. And then we will go to the normal sharing, volatile, synchronization, all those kind of things. Then we should go to the what was the problem there lying in that. Okay, there was no problem at all, but it is like the code writing was very tough at that level. Then we will go that how Java util concurrent package came, and how we started pushing the new APIs like parking, unparking, this blocking queue. Okay, sir, other things. Okay, and then we had a lot of barriers also in the Java APIs, that how we can use the barriers, and then how we can use things like locks and semaphores, right? So this needs a series of understanding. Okay, if you guys have the patience to listen everything, then we can definitely, I mean, presentations are ready, like kind of things ready. It is just some animation need to put here. Is it not a better idea to discuss all those things rather than just concluding the guidelines?
Yes, definitely. That will also help us to appreciate and debug the things.
Okay, that sounds good, because generally guidelines are slaves of your code. Okay, so anything related to the memory or garbage collector or the performance optimization, this that, what happens that when your code changes, and when we change our company, things changes actually. Okay, there can be places where like a lot of big data structure are written. Okay, massive arrays are written. Then it works in a different way. And then you can go to some places where a lot of linked list is written. Okay, a lot of maps are written, a lot of trees are written. Okay, and what happens is that these data internally have a different way to handle. Okay, like it is easy to split a array kind of data structure. It is not easy to split a list kind of data structure. It is easy to cache a array kind of data structure. It is not easy to cache a linked list kind of data structure. So we will go through each and everything, and let's go sequentially over it. Okay, but Satish, I need some time to handle this work.
No problem. Yeah, we will finish this memory and then we'll go. Maybe we can plan something like this. Memory series we'll complete, then we'll start with the data series, and then we will start with the concurrency series. It will give a clear structure, because after we reading data, right, concurrency will be really handy.
Okay. So memory, I have only one talk left, which we will do into the next week, where I'm going to discuss you like how the garbage collector is not a big deal now. I mean, you should not even think of garbage collector. You can just move on any of the modern GC and that's it. I mean, you're done. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, before we wind up, just a small input. We want to make same like other sessions. We want to make even data engineering very precise, customized for your own use. So anybody using any specific data engineering tool, please share it with Souvik in our LinkedIn page. We will try to accommodate the tasks as per that tools only, so that it will be useful for your daily work also. You can give us that list. We'll make sure it happens to that list. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for joining for another session. Have a great day. Happy New Year.